Good morning, everybody. Доброго дня. Як завжди, я сподіваюся, що у вас все добре. Сьогодні we're going to be looking at lots of different questions that people have asked me on Twitter. Є дуже багато різних тем. У нас сьогодні буде Unreal Past, різниця між should і ought to, все про pronouns, a few small grammatical things like finishing sentences with a preposition, split infinitives і так далі. And also we're going to be looking at the passive voice. Тому, як зазвичай, сподіваюся, що це буде корисним. І буду тут, може година. Побачимо, скільки часу нам потрібно. І як завжди, якщо у вас є будь-яке запитання під час стріму, будь ласка, напишіть в чати. I'm always here to answer questions, and it's very important that everyone understands the ideas, the points. So if there's anything that you're not sure about, please write a message, напишіть в чати, and I will be happy to answer any of your questions that you have. So let's make a start. The first topic that we're going to look at today is the unreal past. And the unreal past can be quite difficult if you consider the past as only as the past. But if we also look at it in the same way as it is in the Ukrainian language, there are many similarities with the unreal past as it is in English and as it is in Ukrainian. So first of all, we need to consider what actually is the unreal past. So the unreal past is when we use past tenses, past simple, past continuous, to describe the past time that is not real. Maria, вітаю. Дуже радий, що ви з нами сьогодні. So we use the unreal past to describe events in the present or future that are not real. So, for example, we can say something like, if only I had a Ferrari, наприклад. So here, as we can see, we have past simple. But this is not about the past. This sentence is describing a situation in the present which is not real. I do not have a Ferrari at the moment. So we can think of this sentence as, I don't have a Ferrari, but I want one. So we have an unreal situation. And this is the fundamental idea of the unreal past, where we describe something which is not true in the present or future. And normally we use either past simple or past continuous. Another example, just with past continuous this time, we can say something like, I wish I was coming with you tomorrow. So if we think of this in normal English, this would be the idea of, I'm not coming with you tomorrow, but I would like to. So again, we are describing an unreal, hypothetical situation in the present. And to do this, we use the past simple or past continuous. If we want to talk about an unreal situation in the past, a hypothetical past, then we use past perfect. So for example, we can say, I wish I had brought more money. Наприклад. So here, I didn't bring more money, and now I regret this. So in this situation, we are talking about the past. So the main difference with when we use these unreal hypothetical pasts, past simple and past continuous are for present and for future, and past perfect we use to talk about the past. Now, there is also an interesting nuance with this second sentence, which I'm just going to remove the other sentences and we'll focus on this one. Now, here we have a past continuous, and here we have what looks like a normal sentence. I wish I was coming with you tomorrow. However, it is also possible to say, I wish I were coming with you tomorrow. And when we have these unreal presents or future, we have two possibilities. We can use was or we can use were. Were is usually considered to be more formal. So if we use this in more formal situations, we can use it with any person. So if I were, if you were, if he were, if she were, и так далее. So we use this form in more formal situations. In normal, everyday English, we can just use was. I wish I was coming with you tomorrow. In normal, everyday English, this is okay, this is good, this is absolutely fine. But in more formal contexts, it is very typical to use were instead of was. So maybe just one more example. Like, for example, we can say something like, I wish I was taller. Again, normal spoken English, this is totally fine. More formal English, I wish I were taller. The meaning is the same. There is no real difference in the meaning of these sentences, but were is more formal in its use. It's also worth considering here that there are many phrases that we use to show that we are talking about an unreal situation. And when we use these phrases, we normally use some kind of past verb to show that we are talking about an unreal situation. One example of this would be the phrase, it's time. So when we use this expression, we use it to say that something is not happening, but it should be. So for example, we can say, it's time we left. This means, this gives the idea, we are not leaving now, but we should be leaving now. In my opinion, I think now is the right time to leave. And because this is not happening, we have to use the past simple. So its time is a very typical construction. We can also use as well a very nice expression, which is the phrase, well, two similar expressions. We can use the phrases would rather and would sooner. Both of these phrases show preferences. They both show preferences. And they are both used with past simple after them to show preferences. So, for example, we can say, I'd rather you gave me the money now. Наприклад. Окей. Дякую, Марія. Дуже радий, що це цікаво. Або ми можемо теж сказати, I'd sooner you gave me the money now. So I'm showing that I have a preference, what I prefer, and so we can use I would rather, I'd rather, I would sooner, I'd sooner, plus past simple, and this shows a preference. One more example, maybe something like, I'd rather you didn't smoke here. Or again, I'd sooner you didn't smoke here. And here I am saying that I would prefer if you do not smoke in this place. And the last kind of typical use of this past simple is when we have a use of as if and as though. So we use these constructions to show that, let's put this into the text first. So as if and as though. We use this construction to show that something appears true, but it is not the same as reality. То, наприклад, ми можемо сказати he talks to me as if I was або were. We can use both options, as we talked about before. We can use was or were. Stupid, наприклад. So, something appears true. This person thinks that I am stupid. But in reality, I am not stupid. I am a normal functioning human being. And again, this refers to the present or future using the same rules as we've already talked about, where if we have an unreal situation in present or future, then we use past simple. If we want to talk about the past, then we use past perfect, exactly the same as we already talked about. So, for example, we can say something like, what could we say here? He is acting as if nothing had happened. Here we are talking about the past. Something happened. We know that something happened. But he acts, he behaves like nothing happened at all. So all of these constructions we use with the unreal past. Now, there are many examples. Є дуже багато прикладів. But these are the most typical and most kind of useful ones, I think. Okay, so in principle, that's everything about the use of the unreal past. Does anyone have any questions about this before we go to the next topic? Popiju vodičku. Okay, it looks like no questions. Zdaje się, że zapytania Maya. So we can go to our next topic. Now, the next topic is it's not very difficult to understand, but a lot of people have problems with this. And this is about the words should and ought to, and what the difference is. Jaka różnica u nas między should i ought to. I w принципе, różnicy немає. In positive sentences, we can say, for example, I should go to the gym, or I ought to go to the gym. They're exactly the same, no real difference. Basically the same. But ought to is usually only used in the positive. Теоретично ми можемо вживати ought to в negative sentences та в questions. Але це звучить дуже... це жахливо, коротше, просто не звучить. То, наприклад, якщо це негативне, ми можемо сказати I shouldn't go to the gym. That's okay, that's fine. То все нормально. If we use ought to, тут у нас буде I oughtn't to go to the gym. And I hope that you can hear that this sounds very strange. This sounds very unusual to say it like this. So this is not usually a good thing to do. The same with questions. So, for example, we can say, should I go to the gym? Should I go to the gym? To все нормально. Ale якщо з ought to, ought I to go to the gym? І теж це звучить не дуже добре. Нам не подобається. То теоретично так ми можемо так сказати, але як зазвичай у звичайному поспілкуванні ми просто вживаємо ought to лише в positive sentences. Якщо ми хочемо сказати в negative або в questions, то нам треба вживати лише should. But the basic meaning is exactly the same. There is no real difference between them. Okay, so let's now move on to our next topic, and the next topic is quite a big topic that someone asked about on Twitter, and this is the topic of pronouns. Words like I, you, me, mine, myself, she, hers, и так далее. So we're going to look at the... of course, I expect that everybody knows the... I'm going to assume that everybody knows words like I, me, you, her, because these are they're quite low-level words. So I think that most people will feel okay with these. So we're going to look at some of the more unusual uses, some of the more difficult uses of these types of words, and also some of the typical mistakes that people make when we use them. Now, I think we can maybe start with looking at subject and object pronouns, because there's a few nuances with these. Just to say the difference between subject and object. So, for example, we have I, me. I is subject, me is object. Or, for example, he, him. He is subject, I is object. And so we're going to, so he is subject, him is object, I should say. And so we're going to look at a few interesting situations about these, about when we use them, how we use them, and so on. So we're going to start by having a look at the phrase as or than. When you have these two words in a sentence, it is possible to use either the subject pronoun or the object pronoun. We only use the subject pronoun in very, very formal English. To jest дуже, дуже офіціальна англійська мова. Як зазвичай ми просто вживаємо object pronoun. То, наприклад, ми можемо сказати he is a better, наприклад, tennis player than me. Тут у нас є object pronoun. So this is normal, this is usual. In very formal English, як я сказав, це дуже офіціально. Ми майже ніколи так не каже. То ми можемо так не кажемо. То ми можемо сказати he is a better tennis player than I. Теоретично це правильно, але найкращий варіант, 99% of the time, he is a better tennis player than me. The problem, I think, is that in Ukrainian, in this situation, you would probably say ніж я. And people think, okay, ніж я, тому than I. And it doesn't work like that. We cannot always translate exactly from Ukrainian into English, or indeed from English into Ukrainian. So after the words as and than, you have a choice, but almost always it will be better to use the object pronoun in normal, everyday spoken English. And so this is what I would recommend for this. It's a very similar situation with the phrase it is. After this construction, it's very similar. We can use the object pronoun or the subject pronoun. So, for example, we can say something like, it's them who asked for help. Again, object pronoun them here, usual normal English. Very officially, very formally, we can also say it's they who asked for help. Але як as і than це дуже офіціально. Тому, як зазвичай, ми просто вживаємо object pronoun після it is, it was, it will be, і так далі. That's what we usually have. Now, there's also an interesting point with subject pronouns, which is very different to Ukrainian. If we have two pronouns in a sentence, so for example, if we have like I and you, then in this situation, we always put the word I last of the subjects. There is a lot of debate about why we do this, like where this comes from. Why do we always put I second? But I believe from my own research that this is to do maybe with politeness, that we are putting the other people first to show that they are more important than us, for example. So if we have something like, let me just change from you. So like, for example, my sister and I went to the park. I don't know. You and I should leave now. In these situations, we always put I second. And again, it's a very strange thing because there's no theoretical grammatical reason why I should be the second word in the sentence. It just is. Просто так кажемо. So this is a very typical, not mistake exactly, but it's something to remember, that if you have a double subject, two subjects in a sentence, I should always be the second of the subjects, not the first. That's the standard normal way to do it. Now, I also wanted to consider me, myself, and I. No, what exactly? I is less the bottom of the list, I guessed, in respect. So yeah, even with me, myself, this comes first, and I is always the least important. Просто так кажемо. So I also wanted to look at the use of he, she, and it, because again, this is very different to the Ukrainian language. We have many differences, and there's often a lot of confusion about, like, what do we use to talk about animals? What word do we use if we don't know what gender a person identifies as? There can be many issues here. So, as a general rule, we use the word it to refer to stray animals or animals that we have no connection with, like no relationship, or we don't know these animals. And we also use it for newborn babies if we don't know the gender. So, for example, if we consider about animals, first of all, if it's an animal we have no relationship with, then we always use it. But if you have your little булочка at home who you love very, very much and is like a part of the family, then we would use he or she to talk about this if you have some kind of strong emotional feeling towards this animal. And with babies, if we don't know the gender, we need to use it. I know maybe it sounds a little bit strange, like це жива, це людина, але ми вживаємо it, but it is the correct form. Ми можемо вживати he або she, тільки якщо ми знаємо, чи це він або вона. І якщо ми не знаємо, то треба вживати it. So this is one of the problems. Now, one of the other issues as well is, what about adults? What about if you have somebody and you don't know what their gender is? Now, there's a couple of ways to deal with this. For normal, everyday usage, if it is an unknown gender, you don't know, again, what the person's gender identity is, then in spoken English, it is very typical to use the word they. So, for example, we can say, like, we have a new student today. I hope they are nice. So, as you can see, we are talking about one student, but we use the word they because I don't know if this person is male or female or any other non-binary, any other gender identity. They is kind of the default in normal spoken everyday English. And there can be a lot of problems with this because in older English, like sort of 50, 60 years ago, people often used the word he here. Like he was the default that people used. But obviously in the name of equality, like why should we automatically use he if we don't know if it's a man or a woman or whatever their gender identity is? And so because of this, using he in this way it's not really considered polite anymore. And so because of this, we switch to they. Now, of course, you can also say, I hope he or she is nice. Je taki wariant. But it it becomes a little bit difficult to keep saying he or she, he or she, he or she. Тому ми можемо просто вживати they. It's not traditional English, but this is the way that people speak. This is how people actually use the language. And I always think that this is more important than following some, traditional rules of language. How people actually speak is the most important. And most people, the majority of people in these situations, would use the word they. Just one more example of this, just another example that I noted down earlier. If we have something like someone called you from the university. Here we have no idea what this person's gender identity is. So what we could say here would be, did they leave their name? So again, using here they and their because we do not know what their gender identity is. Now, of course, like before, ми можемо вживати did he or she leave his or her name, але це просто так довго і ми просто так не кажемо. Тому найкращий варіант це вживати they, their, them і так далі. І ось так ми кажемо, як це звичайно. Okay. So we're now going to look at some slightly more complex pronouns, and we are going to consider reflexive pronouns. We're going to be looking at now reflexive pronouns. Now, reflexive pronouns, these are words such as myself, yourself, ourselves, and so on. So in general, we use reflexive pronouns when the subject and the object are the same person or the same thing. So, for example, we can say Ben bought himself an ice cream. Він купив собі. We use a regular pronoun if we are talking about another person. So, for example, Ben bought him an ice cream. Ben купив йому морозиво. So in this situation, we use himself to refer to when the subject and the object are the same. And that's the basic difference. There are a couple of little nuances here, but usually when the subject and object person are the same thing, then we use the reflexive pronoun. Ale, and there is an ale here. If we have a preposition, then we only use the object pronoun. We do not use reflexive. So, for example, I can say, I came out of the metro and looked around me. Here we have the preposition around. And so because of this, we should use the object pronoun. We use me and not myself. If we had no preposition, then myself would be okay, but obviously look to myself is not grammatically correct. So when we have a preposition, we should normally be using an object pronoun when it is clear who we are referring to or what we are referring to. Now, there are a few situations where it might seem a little bit unusual to use a reflexive pronoun, but usually it's because they have a more idiomatic meaning of the use of them. So, like, for example, we can say, did the children behave themselves? Це означає behave well, наприклад. Або ми можемо сказати I brought some cake. Help yourselves. Take as much cake as you want. To це як пригощайтеся українською. So sometimes there are a little bit strange uses of these reflexive pronouns, but if they are a little bit strange like this, then usually it's because they are idiomatic rather than actually referring to the person themselves. Now, one other thing I want to refer to talking about pronouns is the idea of reciprocal, which I can't spell today, my God, I need to get some sleep. Reciprocal pronouns. And reciprocal pronouns are basically the use of two standard expressions, which are each other and one another. And the difference between these is that there is it's a subtle difference between using reflexive and reciprocal, but it is a very important one. So, for example, if you say like, I don't know, Sasha and Masha blamed themselves, then this sentence tells us that they both blamed the two of them and nobody else. But if you say Sasha and Masha blamed each other, then this gives the idea of Sasha blamed Masha and Masha blamed Sasha. Individually, they thought they did nothing wrong, but they each thought that somebody else did something wrong. With themselves, they both think it was their fault, both together, and that's the main difference between them. Now, if we go to theory, to the theoretical form of the language, there is a small difference between each other and one another. Each other usually refers to only two subjects, and one another to more than two, so to 3, 4, 5, etc. But in normal, everyday English, you can use them in exactly the same way. There's no practical difference between these anymore. So Sasha and Masha blamed each other, Sasha and Masha blamed one another. Вони є синонімами у звичайній англійській мові. Сучасній англійській мові теж можу сказати. Okay, then one other thing related to pronouns, this is the last thing that I wanted to look at, was about impersonal pronouns. Now, we use impersonal pronouns when we want to talk about general feelings and opinions. And to do this, we can use three words. We can use you, we, and they. But there is a little bit of a difference between them. The most typical one is to use you. So, for example, you can wear whatever you want to go to the theatre, theatre nowadays. Here I'm not talking about you, це не про ти або ви, це просто взагалі. Any person can wear whatever they want when they go to the theatre. If we want to include the speaker, if you want to include yourself in these ideas, then we normally use we to show this. So we can use exactly the same sentence, but we can just change the pronouns. So from you to we here, and you to we here. So in this sentence now, you is just not including yourself. You refers to people in general. When we use we include the speaker as well. So we can wear whatever we like to go to the theatre these days. And if you want to make it clear that you do not want to include yourself, you're talking about other people in general, then we should use the word they. So, for example, they behave really badly at football matches nowadays. Again, we are not talking about some specific concrete group of people. We're just talking about people at football matches in general. And we use they to describe this. Now, in very, very formal English, I need to mention this even though it's very, very formal, using the word one to refer to people in general. So, like, for example, one can... What can one do? One can sympathize with the problems that the workers face. Now, this shows that we are referring to people generally. This includes ourselves, but this is incredibly formal. Це дуже офіціальна мова, і люди просто так не кажемо. Може, якщо ми хочемо... Якщо ми жартуємо, то ми можемо виживати one. Але як зазвичай ми просто так не кажемо, бо це дуже офіціально, навіть аристократично, можемо сказати також. Тому звичайні люди так не кажемо. Я сам так не кажу. То я би сказав завжди або you, або we, або they. Залежить від контексту, найкращий варіант. Але one – це дуже офіціально. Я просто знав, що в школах іноді так викладають, що в англійській мові, якщо ми не знаємо, то треба виживати one. Але це дуже офіціально, це може трохи старомодно також. Тому найкращий варіант це буде або you, або we, або they. Okay, so let's now continue. Just a few smaller questions here to be dealing with. There was a question I received about prepositions and about finishing a sentence with a preposition. Like, for example, something along the lines of, who are you going to the cinema with? And, or, I don't know who I am going with. Something like that. So putting with at the end of a sentence or any preposition. Now, there is a belief that putting a preposition at the sentence is wrong. And there is even a name for this. This is called a stranded preposition. This is the name of this construction. And many people will tell you that it is not grammatically correct to put a preposition at the end of the sentence. Коротше, це маячня. We can put a preposition at the end of the sentence, at the end of a question. It is totally okay. It is totally normal. This is how people speak in normal language. Again, there are some people who try and...